Welcome to the Bourbon Talk Show, the ABV Network's original YouTube series where we interview some of the most interesting people from the world of bourbon. Today on the show, we'll be talking to Colin Spoelman, co-founder and distiller for Kings County, and OJ Lima of Taste Select Repeat. My name is McNew. Please join me in welcoming my host for the evening, Steve Akeley. Woo!
Woo! Woo! Yeah. Woohoo!
Our audience needs to be louder than me, Steve. We need to work on this.
There we go. There we go. We got to have a loud audience for sure. So I just want to welcome our guests here, Colin and OJ. Guys, looking forward to talking to you, learning more about your personal stories and your companies and all that stuff. Should be really fun. Before we get to that though, McNew and I always like to get together and just talk a little bit about the bourbon industry. And sometimes it's the real bourbon industry. Sometimes it's our personal bourbon industry. It's things that we have going on in our roles in the world of bourbon. Before we get to all that though, McNew, what do you think about the new shirt? The new shirt, huh?
It's a good shirt. I like it, Steve.
Yes. It's a Tommy Bahama. It's a Tommy Bahama.
Special buttons, the swordfish buttons.
It does not. It does not have one of those on here, but it is a special shirt. It even comes with a card. It comes with a card. Look, I brought the card up too. This is the Artist Series, which is the highest level of Tommy Bahama fanship. And this is this shirt was designed by an artist by the name of Jordan Ballard. And if I was an artist, I am not, but if I was, that would be the number one thing I would strive to be, not to be on buildings or murals or anything like that. Design a Tommy Bahama shirt would be as high as it gets, I think.
You remember, Steve, when you had a phase where you terribly drew all of our faces and posted them in the group?
Yes.
Why don't you stick our faces on swordfishes and submit it to Tommy Bahama? See what happens.
Yeah. That goes back to it was kind of a goof when you start writing. You realize that to promote your work, you'll do anything. You literally will. This is, and the first time I ever did that was before the Bourbon Show and all that. Before the ABV Network. You got to try to stand out on social media and stuff like that. So I started drawing people. I was new to social media. I never had a social media account until I was like 46 years old. And so I start getting on there, get some followers and that. And I thought, well, how do I get people to pay attention to me? Well, I'll start drawing them. Just people I don't even know. I'll just start drawing them. I'm a terrible artist, by the way. And believe it or not, it kind of, I don't know, at least if you draw someone, even if it's terrible, they will pay attention, I found. So
and people started asking you. Susie Youngson asked you to draw her when the
people
rest of us were like,
it kind of takes away from the fun when they start requesting. So when you're terrible artists, because then you're like, oh gosh, they want it good. I don't know. So
it puts on some pressure you didn't know you had.
Yeah, it's just a goofy thing that I did. There's a lot of crazy stuff I did trying to get going, and then once started writing bourbon stuff, and then it kind of took care of itself. But yeah, early years was interesting, and then I brought it back to drawing thing more for fun several times.
Yeah, that took off in the group for a while, our network group. Yeah. You could put us on some swordfishes. I'm sure Tommy Bahama would love it.
Maybe that's my way I get in.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be the ultimate. All right, some bourbon industry news. Story number one. This one's kind of cool, and again, this falls into my personal world, but it's very cool. So I've wanted to start a coffee company for years. That's another passion of mine. I love coffee, and I like good coffee. And if you drink Folgers, that's fine. That's not my thing. I like good different types of coffee, and I've been trying to start, and I don't know, I haven't been able to get it going, but I talked to my buddy Adam Stumpf about that, who owns Stumpy Spirits. And we are going to be working together. He knew a coffee roaster, guy that was a friend of his he grew up with, and he's got a business where he packages it up and all that kind of stuff too. So it's going to be, we had a meeting this week where we drank all different types of coffee and stuff like that, landed on what we want it to be. We're going to age it in barrels at Stumpy's warehouse, right up at the top center, that beautiful part of the warehouse.
Yeah.
All that heat and stuff like that. So it's going to be a cool thing. And we're going to do a bunch of special releases. We also, they have Jamaican Blue for, coffee, which is kind of cool. And Kona, they've got some really cool things. They work with importers from, all over the globe. And we're going to do some special releases on some really cool things if you're into coffee. So that Jamaican Blue Mountain is like the Pappy Van Winkle of coffee. So we're gonna play off. Everything's gonna be like in the bourbon industry. Like we'll release.
Yeah, it's all gonna be barrel aged, so that's gonna be really
all barrel aged. It'll be like during bourbon hunting season. We're gonna put out a special one, and it'll be fun. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Story number two. You don't like burgers, but if you did, Wendy's. Way back when you used to eat fast food, Wendy's was your favorite.
I like the nuggets. I was never there for their burgers. And do you want to know why?
Why?
Because they're square. And when I was a kid, my dad told me they were square because they were made out of worms. And I have never eaten a Wendy's
Wait a
burger.
minute. Worms? Why would worms make it square?
Because he told me you line them up because they're long, right? And you just said you line them up on the grill, smashed them together, and that's why it was a square. And I believed him for my whole life, and I still cannot eat one.
Well, they've got a new one out. It's the bourbon bacon cheeseburger.
Still not here for it.
So it's a cheeseburger with bacon on there, applewood smoked. It sounds very good in the description, like applewood smoked bacon. And the sauce is a bourbon sauce that also has bacon in the sauce. So I don't know. I'm sure it'll be terrible.
I like a bourbon barbecue sauce. That's delicious, but I don't think that I want it from Wendy's. No offense, Wendy's.
No offense, Wendy's. Yeah. we don't like Wendy's unless they want to sponsor the show. Then we love Wendy's.
Then you're the best thing in the world. Go on and sponsor
Absolutely.
us.
We're smart like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to fight with them though, because whoever runs their social media on Twitter is a savage. Let's not fight with them. They will destroy us.
Really? Okay. Oh, I didn't know that. I have never followed them, so I don't know.
Check that out. They're feisty.
That's funny, actually.
Yeah.
The third story, I think this is a place that you like to go. The Evan Williams Experience, downtown Louisville. You like to go?
Yeah,
right?
that place is great. I love that place.
So they're finally. I always wonder what they did. They say that we do a barrel a day, and I've never seen anything with it. I didn't know if it was getting dumped and mixed with other things or what happens, but they're finally released it. So it's a product called Square 6, and it's going to be $89.99 for a 750 milliliter bottle, and it's going to be available through the Distillery gift shop at the Evan Williams Experience, as well as a few select Kentucky retailers. So I don't know what that means, but I would buy
and it's a high rye, right?
Yeah, it's a high rye, so it's a different mash bill. So I mean that gets my interest. A different mash bill from Heaven Hill. That's interesting. I've gone through that distillery. I think the distillery is kind of cool. It's a pot still. Heaven Hill's not a pot still place. This is a pot still. So I want to try it and see what's going on. So I would if I got the chance, I would drop the $89.99 without even tasting it. I would jump right in and see what it's got going on. So
yeah, I mean, I would check it out and throw it into one of my try it series.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it sounds cool. That experience is really cool, and they do good stuff. So I would check it out for sure.
Okay. Yeah, if I see one, maybe I'll grab it for your try it series. Now you'll have to sell one less ticket because I want to drink some of that. So
that's fair.
I would take one of your tickets. So yeah, very cool. All right. Well, let's get on to the show. Our first guest is a Kentucky native who brought Kentucky with him to New York, where he is now making moonshine amongst other products in Brooklyn. He's also an artist and an author, and also just a good guy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Colin Spoelman. Hey, Colin.
Hey, Steve.
How you doing, buddy?
Very good. Very good. Nice to be on here.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. Now, I understand you had something kind of crazy going on with your son. Tell us a little bit about that, because it sounded like it was a little scary. So what happened?
I was putting the kid to bed. He's 4 years old. And he's like, just chewing on this like little, I didn't know what he was chewing on, but it was like one of those needles you use to inflate like a soccer ball or a volleyball.
Yeah.
And I look over at him and he has swallowed it.
Oh,
needle in first. To which I'm like, all right, we got minutes here with his, alive. We should cherish them.
Jeez.
My wife is like, call 911. She sort of jumps into the action, and then we realize like he's actually, he's got a few more days to live because he, didn't puncture anything.
So he was okay. He was breathing fine and all that.
He was fine, but he's got this needle.
You got it out, right? Yeah.
So we got to get it out of there. And so we went to the emergency room, and the doctors took an X-ray, and they're like, "Looks like he swallowed one of those needles you use to inflate a volleyball." It's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. And they said, if it went in, it'll probably go out. Here's a little plastic dish and a tongue depressor. Let us know.
Well, let us know. Okay.
If it doesn't come out, then you have a problem. And lo and behold, 3 days later, it just came out the normal way, and we went on with our lives. But I did, it was a big item. I have it here.
Oh gosh! Yeah. Wow.
So, you know, that can
Sterilized?
pass through a 4-year-old.
Sterilized,
That's
yes.
one to put in the baby book. That's a good story for when he graduates.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
right.
Yeah, don't lose that. That is a story there. So yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Well,
You
I'm
can
glad.
sanitize these things. Fortunately,
Sure.
I know a thing or two about
Right.
proper sanitation.
Well, I'm glad he's okay. I mean, that
Yes.
certainly had to be, as a parent, concerning. I love your initial reaction. Here, let's make
Right.
it good.
right.
So, you know, you grew up in Kentucky. Tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Kentucky.
So I'm from Harlan County, which is really more the sort of Appalachian coal mining, kind of the moonshine part of Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
it was a dry county, and to get any sort of alcohol, we would go to a bootlegger. And, you know, very different experience than when I moved to New York eventually, and there's a bar in every corner, very different relationship to alcohol. But I got, you know, through that experience of sort of understanding how unusual bootleggers are in America these days, I got kind of curious about that and curious about distilling. And I think, you know, Kentuckians understand that this is our cultural inheritance. And even in New York, people would say, oh, what kind of bourbon should I be drinking? What kind of, and I would, you know, say, I don't know anything about bourbon, but I have some moonshine back in my apartment. And people were so into it, you know, even in New York, which you sort of is this culinary elitist sort of palate. You can get anything from any culture anywhere all over the world, but like, you know, Kentucky moonshine was not something that people readily had. So to be able to kind of offer that to people got me interested in just hobby distilling, what you might also call moonshining.
Right.
And so got a still off the internet and just started playing around with the intent to make moonshine that I would sell, you know, illegally.
Right.
Not really starting what ultimately I soon realized. First of all, I had a lot of fun doing it. And second of all, I realized you can't really do this in any sort of real way without risking getting into pretty serious trouble, which I did not want to do. So I looked into getting a license, and then that's when I realized, oh, this might actually be something I could do, you know, fully legally in a you know, demised distillery and federally approved. And so in 2010, 11 years ago, started Kings County Distillery with the intention of sort of making moonshine, but then very quickly, once you start as a distiller on the white whiskey, you know, it's a matter of time before you're like thinking, what if I put it in a barrel? And once you have a 2-year, you're like, what about the 4-year? And once you have the 4-year, you ask, what about the 7-year? And it is soon a life commitment to the art form. So we just came out with a 7-year whiskey last year. More of that is coming out. And then just yesterday, we released 2 new barrel strength whiskeys, a 4-year and a 6-year. So we have now sort of reached a point in the distillery's life cycle where we have pretty decently mature whiskey. And that feels like a real achievement, because for a long time, people were pretty dismissive of not just us, but a lot of other craft distillers. But, you know, I've always been, you know, sort of long-term vision, and it's, you know, it's starting to come around, and that's really fun to share with people.
Yeah. Take me back to Kentucky for just a second here. As a child, now I know you talked about when you're older, you know, maybe even doing a little bootlegging in college years and stuff like that. But as a child, were you aware of the moonshine culture and things like that? Was that part of just everyday life where you knew about it as a
Well,
kid?
definitely, yeah. There were definitely like sketchy houses.
Uh-huh.
So my dad was a Presbyterian minister, and
Okay.
nobody in my family drank anything ever at all. Not, you know, not that he wouldn't touch it, but it just, you know, it wasn't really a part of life. And yeah, we would drive around, and then there's, you know, oh, that's a house with a bootlegger. And there was a kind of, you know, my dad was kind of like, you know, there was a little bit of a moral judgment on the whole thing. So I kind of grew up with that same sensibility. But then, of course, you reach your teenage years, and all of a sudden everything flips, and I'm like, oh, sketchy, huh?
Right.
How sketchy could they really be? And so, there was a little fascination with that. And so, yeah, I guess I would say around 13, 14, got interested in not really moonshine, but just drinking alcohol, which, is not unique to Kentucky. But, once that awareness came up, it's a lot harder to get it when you have to go to a bootlegger or a moonshiner than it is when you just get somebody who's 21 to, go buy you a case at the whatever.
Right.
So it was a little bit like the drug dealer was actually sort of easier to get to than the bootlegger, because the drug dealer was somebody your age. The bootlegger was like, an old man or an old woman who'd been doing it for forever, and a little bit of a who's your people, who's like how do I know you, son, that kind of
Right.
thing.
And where did you go to college?
So I went to Yale.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a jump from Appalachia to Yale.
But, and what were you studying? What did you want to be? Obviously, distilling wasn't really in the future at that point. It's something that you like to do, was interested. It was part of your heritage. But what were you planning on doing after getting out of Yale?
Well, I studied architecture and I studied theater, and I had no particular agenda for a long time. Hence, maybe how I got into bootlegging, and couldn't quite figure it out. But this was the one thing that I had ever done that people kind of were like, "Oh, that's really cool, and that's interesting. I like, tell me about that." And so, it was kind of a party trick that kind of evolved into a business. And now, a fairly robust. I mean, we're still a small business. We do 3 barrels a day. So I don't know where that puts us in the scheme of distillers, but we're a medium-sized craft distiller, which puts us, smaller than pretty much anybody operating in Kentucky, but pretty big for New York State. So that's kind of where we fall. And then I should also say, we've kind of, as moonshine has sort of fallen a little bit out of favor, we've kind of taken the opportunity of being in New York, which is this great melting pot of cultures from around the world. And so we've kind of leaned into whiskeys that borrow from Scotch tradition, or we just came out with an Irish style whiskey that was really fun to do, an Irish style moonshine, which was even more fun to do. So kind of using the fact that we're not Kentucky to kind of play different world distilling traditions against each other. And so I guess if I look at what excites me about what's going on in whiskey and what I hope our distillery does for the next, 10 years, it's to really kind of play around a lot more and be creative, not just do bourbon. I love bourbon. That's my drink of choice, but to get a little beyond that and do some single malts and some, not just new barrels, but used barrels, play around with that too. So,
yeah. So tell us a little bit about what it was like getting started and what your initial setup was and that type of thing.
Yeah. So when I was hobby distilling in my apartment, I had a stainless steel 8-gallon still, which is about enough to produce in a single run. You can make about 3 to 2/3 of a gallon of high proof whiskey. And so when we got started, we took that same still and just got 4 more of them. And so we would do roughly, all told, we were making about 3 gallons a day. But it was enough at a time when there wasn't any other distilleries operating in Brooklyn. And it was enough to kind of get the brand out there, get bottles on shelves, get people into the distillery to kind of see it. And it was all new to everybody. I mean, craft distilling is a sort of understood, well, people know what that means now, but 11 years ago, it was still kind of, people didn't know quite what to make of it. And to have this kind of little 1-room, 300 square foot with these little vacuum cleaner looking things that were sitting on hot plates and lobster pots full of corn and barley. People just thought it was, they thought it was fun and they were along for the ride. And so we've been pretty much expanding ever since then. We got some new stills from Scotland in 2014, and then we just added a new Vendome stripping still that's been around for about a year, a little over a year and a half.
Yeah. So tell us what your new place is like versus that 300 square foot start that you had. So what's it like if we were to visit?
So we're in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which was a shipbuilding for the U.S. Navy, and so it has kind of a lot of old school architecture. And we're in the Paymasters building, so it's kind of the financial administration building. Not an obvious building to put a distillery in, but it's got a lot of windows and it's got a lot of history. Which, if you're a new brand trying to, launch yourself in the whiskey space, understanding what your history is very important. And there's actually a lot of whiskey history in Brooklyn. It just is sort of before Prohibition. And so there were a lot of Irish distillers, a lot of moonshiners that were actually operating in Brooklyn during the Civil War. This great history that was just right outside in front of our building. But inside we run all pot stills, which I think is not unique, but still relatively unusual in bourbon whiskey, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do open fermentation. We do aging in all different barrel formats. So the different barrel format aging, the pot stills, that's sort of what we're borrowing from single malt Scotch whiskey. And then from American whiskey, we're borrowing corn focus, rye focus, new barrels, usually, but not always. And then we also have a great tasting room that's built in the gatehouse to the Navy Yard. It's this sort of sandstone castle looking place. That's a really fun visit if you haven't been, or if you have a plan to come to New York, which you could now do because things are opening up that way, even in New York, which was sort of the scariest and the most intense pandemic experience, I'm sure. But it's a great place to visit, to have a cocktail, to have a flight of whiskeys, to take a tour, to have a tasting class. We do all of that.
So have you really kind of, and maybe you even put a pencil to the numbers of the challenges you have being a New York distiller versus somewhere, almost anywhere else in the country? I mean, everything has to be more expensive for you, from what you pay for rent to even your electricity. Getting your grains has to be a challenge. Tell us a little bit about these challenges.
Well, we do get a tractor trailer worth of corn coming on the BQE, over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Right.
This giant tractor trailer of corn from upstate New York. And then it pumps it into our silo, which we have behind the distillery. So we have some great kind of rural moments that are happening right in the industrial heart of the city that I'm very proud of, that I think is a lot of fun. It is not cheap, and neither is our whiskeys, but I also think, there aren't a lot of distilleries like us. And so I think because we're in a city that's fairly open-minded and is fairly adventurous and is it's an expensive city. So if you're going to make an expensive whiskey, do it in New York City, where people aren't necessarily going to be as put off by it as if we were doing it in, obviously, Kentucky, I know well. So there's a lot of challenges, and we've just actually started aging some of our whiskey on Long Island in a town called Patchogue, just because the barrel storage has gotten both expensive, and there's some fire concerns from the city of New York about whiskey storage in New York City. So it may be easier for us going forward just to move that off site. But even there, you have challenges of shipping barrels off site and then bringing them back when the time comes. Yeah. But you're so close to the community. That's the advantage of obviously, look at Louisville, where you've had so many distilleries pop up just in walking distance on Main Street there. Even, Evan Williams is a great example of, Heaven Hill didn't really have a distillery that people could go tour, but they've got this great, fun pot still distillery right downtown in Louisville. So I think, there's everybody in the bourbon world quickly realized that if you can give somebody a good time and you can show them why you're making all the choices that you make, people will appreciate that, and you'll earn some customers and some loyalty.
Yeah. You make a lot of different things. You got the moonshine, your whiskeys, your bourbon, and different types of bourbon, chocolate bourbon, spiced whiskey, a lot of cool different things. But the one that shocked me, because I'm not a peat fan, I always would, I would tell you I don't like scotch, I don't like peat, but your peated bourbon is actually really good stuff. So, how do you do it? What makes it so good?
So that came about because we kind of wanted to make there's a lot of people like bourbon, but a lot of people like Scotch whiskey. So we wanted to make a single malt Scotch and style whiskey. And there were a lot of American single malts that were too American, I felt, and I knew that we had the stills and we could source the grain. So we were pursuing this peated single malt. And at the same time, we ran out of the malt that we used for the bourbon. So we just took the peated malt and made our bourbon with it. And it was not a heavily peated malt to begin with, and we didn't use very much to make the whiskey. So it's not Lafroig or Ardbeg or one of those very heavily peated things. It's just a way to give an American whiskey a little bit of a Scotchy sort of complexity on the finish. And it's been one of my favorite whiskeys that we make. And I think for bourbon people who have traveled a lot through Kentucky bourbon, this is something that's different, but it's also very good. And it's a way to say, all right, we're not trying to do Kentucky. We're not trying to make, the Weller 12 or the Pappy Van Winkle, or even really the Buffalo Trace or the Jim Beam. We're trying to do something that's suited to New York, that's kind of borrowing from tradition, using a pot still, just being kind of creative and different within the American whiskey space. And I think when I go to Kentucky and Tennessee, people are like, peated what? Like,
right.
Don't bring that stuff around here,
Yeah.
But when they try it, they're like, oh, it's not bad, but where's that barrel strength? There's the bottled and bond,
Right.
The more classic styles.
Yeah.
So it becomes a little bit of a regional thing. And my hope has always been to make whiskey for everybody, one way or another. I don't care whether if you say you don't like whiskey, try the chocolate whiskey, try the moonshine. So to not leave anybody kind of left behind, I guess, when they come to visit. And so if you kind of do that, then I feel like we've tried to meet everybody where they are.
Mm-hmm. Your packaging, and show it to the audience here, is just the absolute greatest. I like every component of this. I like the way it feels in my hand. I like the way it looks. I like the lid, just the tin type of lid. I love the font that you use. Again, typewriter type of font, and the fact that the label is so small. I like the fact when you get different styles of your stuff and you put them next to each other, the colors, it's hypnoptizing. Yeah, why does this work so good? Have you done any studies on this? What the hell happened? I can't help myself but buy a new one when I see it, because I just want to.
I know. Well, I think it does a couple things. I mean, one, when we got started, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't hire a graphic designer. I'll show you, actually, in case you haven't seen this. This is one of my first.
Oh, there you go. That's
catching
cool.
A little light here, but that's one of my first.
It's got the typewriter font. Yeah.
Home distilled experience moonshines. And my business partner said, you got to lose the mason jar. It's not working. You lose the neon strip. But I had all of our labels, they're not actually done on a computer. They're literally typed and scanned. And so it kind of gets out of that world of sort of graphic design and just back to kind of an older, simpler kind of landscape. And then I think it does kind of showcase not the graphics of the bottle, but really what's behind the label, which is what we want to foreground, which is the whiskey itself. Yeah. And having multiple versions of it. I mean, you look at my sort of rainbow here.
Yeah.
We've made a lot.
It looks like an old apothecary, which is so cool.
Yeah. It's just beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So Irish style, Scotch single malt style whiskey. We've got old whiskeys, young whiskeys, oat whiskeys, wheat whiskeys, corn whiskeys. You know, if there's a way to kind of manipulate the variables of American whiskey, chances are we've tried it and had a lot of fun with it, even if it didn't end up being popular or selling very much. That's been the fun of it for us, is just being kind of like, if we can conceive of it and think of it, let's try it. And not just me, I should say, Kings County is a group of now a lot of people who have, contributed quite a bit to the legacy of the distillery. Ryan is our head blender. He's a very important person to the business. Nicole Austin, who was our first head blender, is now at George Dickel in Tennessee. So, we're a distillery that people are looking to, it's my hope, let's say, that people are looking to Kings County for ideas and inspiration and maybe talent. I'm happy when people graduate from us and go on to do great other things. So that's cool too.
Yeah. You're also an author. Tell us about some of your works.
So I have here the Guide to Urban Moonshining. So This is, if you are interested in making your own whiskey, this will tell you more or less how to do it, exactly how to do it. And it's also a little bit, even if you don't want to make whiskey, but you want to understand sometimes it helps to understand how you would make whiskey, to understand, what you like about whiskey. And so that book has been very popular. And so the publisher said, well, you want to do another book? And I said, I want to do a book about American distilling history, Jim Beam, Jack Daniel, but also like George Washington and, many people throughout history have had a hand in the distilling business one way or another. And so wrote that history book. Nobody has purchased that book. It's a complete disappointment to everybody except for me, and I'm very proud of it. So, but if you are interested in distilling history, American distilling history, both the sort of well-known distillers, but also there's a lot of moonshiners and people who are kind of maybe overlooked in terms of history. Jack Daniels I wrote about, but I also wrote about Nearest Green, who was a big part of that story even before, everything that's happened with that brand and that business. So, really trying to find the untold stories as much as the ones that people know very well because of the names of the bottles on the shelf.
Yeah. You're also above and beyond an author and a whiskey maker. You also are an artist. I mean, I think you've got a couple works of art that people are probably familiar with that are listening or watching this show and might not even attribute it to you, but they've seen it. I guarantee if you put it up there, people have seen that.
So part of this book, I was kind of trying to organize the world of Kentucky bourbon.
Yeah, there you go.
And so, this is the family tree of bourbon. If you are curious about it, you can look it up online. And it was a way to kind of understand that you have different mash bills coming from different distilleries that are different corporate owners. But actually, there's only about 3 recipes that go into Kentucky bourbon, different age statements, different prices. And I think a lot of people have found that as a way to understand American whiskey, bourbon whiskey, what I would call commercial traditional whiskey, and then have kind of gotten really into kind of understanding the world of whiskey kind of graphically. And so the Dead Distillers has a book that goes into the history of all those distilleries and the graphic representation of it. So I like, I guess that's maybe the the architecture major trying to find a way to, have a place in a distiller's sort of business.
Yeah, well, it's really cool, and like I said, it's something that you see a lot, and I don't know that it often gets attributed to you, but it should. It belongs to bourbon fans now, I guess. You see it all over.
Well, it's interesting. People do reach out to me, and they're like, "I did find this, and I want to put a mural in my barbecue restaurant, or I want to." Do some t-shirts, and can I license it? And I usually, if people are nice and ask, I usually let people use it or charge some small fee just to be able to kind of let people have it, just to say thank you for asking,
right?
As opposed to taking. But yeah, and I've had a lot of people write in and they're sort of like, will you update it? And at this point, the world of bourbon has gotten so much different that it would be impossible, I think, to recreate it, because when the book came out in 2013, there really were a dozen distilleries that made all of American whiskey. And, some of them weren't known very well, NGP and even Four Roses, may not have been all that well understood. Willet, they were bottling a lot of whiskeys. But now you have, like Wilderness Trail is a distillery that is bigger than George Dickel, and it's brand new. It's been around in its current iteration really since, I don't know if it's
like
6
years. Yeah. It released
Yeah.
a 6-year-old whiskey, so I assume that's about
yeah. So how do you update that? And you have Bardstown Bourbon Company, New Riff, and you have all these great new distilleries that have popped up. And I just think it would be, now we're on a different sort of, we have to chart the world of bourbon slightly differently, because you have so many newer distilleries that are not what I think of when I think of traditional whiskey, which is really just those classic distilleries that have been around forever. Maker's Mark, Jim Beam, Jack Daniel.
Yeah.
So that to me is kind of the history of whiskey, the kind of legacy heritage distillers. And then I'm equally excited about new distillers that are popping up. And so, all of this points to it's a great time in American whiskey, because you just have so many people diving into make it, diving into blend it, diving into brand it, diving into craft distillers all over the country, not just Kentucky, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Even there's a sort of Texas style of whiskey that's emerging. We have Empire Rye in New York. You have Pacific Northwest single malts. So
the whole creating experiences too is a whole new phenomenon that really bonds the customers to the brands and stuff. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff's going on. You do so much experimentation. You've always got something new in the works. As we wrap this up with you today, is there anything cool coming up? Anything you can tell us about?
Well, just today and yesterday, just yesterday, we released this, our latest edition of a barrel strength. It now has a 4-year age statement, 128 proof. And we have a Blender's Reserve barrel strength. That's a 6-year-old 140 proof. Crazy whiskey. It's aged entirely in 15-gallon barrels, which anybody will tell you will be overaged by 6 years. And it's definitely a robust whiskey. It's very barrel forward, but you've never had anything like it. I mean, I was drinking it next to Elijah Craig 22, and it held up.
Wow.
So it has that much kind of barrel emphasis, but it's also pot distilled. So it's got this kind of syrupy, viscous kind of characteristic to it. It's a wild, cool whiskey. So that's coming out. And then over the summer, we have more 7-year-old bourbon coming. We have peated rye whiskey. Stay tuned. We've got a big warehouse, and like to play around with stuff.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us, Colin. Please stick around, sit on the couch as it is. Back in the Carson days, you sit on the couch. Feel free to jump in at any time.
Yeah.
All right. What we'll do next, we'll take a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll be talking to Mr. OJ Lima.
Today's show is sponsored by ABV Network's 2022 Distiller Summit in Key West, Florida. Join us January 27th through 30th next year in sunny Key West as we network with individuals from the bourbon industry and fans of what we do. We'll have a combination of events, meet and greets, and free time to explore the beauty that is Key West. Don't delay, as our hotel room block expires on May 19th. To learn more, head on over to abvnetwork.com/distillers summit.
I'm excited about that. Aren't you, McNew?
I'm super excited. We missed a year. The first year was great. We wanted to do it every single year. 2020 was weird, but can't wait to get back.
Yes. Yeah. So it'll be fun. Should be a great group. And if you want to get in on our hotel rate, it expires May 19th. So the problem is, check the rates. I mean, if you're going to book a room during the summer, it's like $800 a night is cheap.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
we got a great deal.
Key West. It's not cheap. So
Yeah, we got a great deal. Our pricing is really good. It's as strong as anything you see. It's the cheapest way you can book it to, but it's not going to last very long. So they said they would only hold it till May 19th. So book now and lock it in, and contact me if you need to know how to do that.
Yeah, which was actually really generous of them to hold it that long. So
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. And our next sponsor is Moonshine University. Moonshine University offers programs to assist individuals in the bourbon industry or simply fans wanting to step up their knowledge. Whether you are looking for in-person learning at the classrooms of Moonshine University or are looking for self-study online, there are options to fit your unique needs. Check them out at moonshineuniversity.com.
All right. Our next guest is known for his great palate. He's picked some incredible barrels. He's done the ultimate thing in my mind, where he's turned what is a hobby into a full-time job, which is very cool. His company, Taste, Select, Repeat, is changing the world of bourbon and also kind of redefining exactly what a liquor store is. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. OJ Lima. Hey, OJ.
Hey.
Oh, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Obviously it's good to see you, Colin. I've never met you, even though we're both in New York, but I know all of your people, like Jen and Soledad. And you judge a guy on the people that work for and with him. So I know this dude has got to be salt of the earth, because his people are really great. I've a lot of time drinking with them and hanging out. They're always trying to poke at me and be like, "You got to come by." I just haven't had a chance to come by lately.
Yeah. Well, now you have to come by, and I second that. It's been a great opportunity to get to meet you through this program, because it's time.
Yeah, very cool.
That bottled and bond you have over there, I know them. Streets is water, man. Streets is water.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, you guys should definitely know. McNew, we should have flown to New York and just done this in New York.
I know.
Right?
I missed the opportunity in the intro to be like live from New York.
Right.
New Yorkers.
Yeah, we totally blew this one. We totally blew this one for sure.
Yeah, we're only separated. It's
done it live.
Yeah.
It's just like OKI. You and I were only separated by a river, man.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
So OJ, I don't know if people know this or not, but your career was at Def Jam Records, which is really a cool thing. You worked there as an executive for a long time. So tell us about, what you did there, and most importantly, we want scoop. Tell us some of the celebrities that you got to meet in the job that you had. We want to hear it. Come on, man.
So I'm going to date myself, but I started my career in journalism in 1994 as a fact checker at Vibe magazine, which was kind of the second hip hop magazine ever behind the Source. And from 94 until recently, I moved through various companies from print into digital, etc. So I worked for Vibe magazine. I worked for 17 magazine at one point in time. So Stephanie, I probably was responsible for some of the covers,
You probably sent so many magazines to my house. I was into that as a teenager. 17 was my jam.
And so I worked in magazine publishing for a while, until kind of the internet became an actual, like when I started working in magazine publishing, we didn't even have email. That's how old it was. And then I moved from magazine publishing, and then digital kind of popped up, the internet popped up, and I decided to go start my own company building websites. I was really curious on kind of the web digital stuff. I did that for a while, had a nice, really successful boutique web design company. And then a guy that used to work for me that I'd hired many years ago, Noah Callahan Bever, called me up. He was the chief content officer at Complex Magazine, and said, "Hey, I need a guy to come in to run my editorial team, but we're trying to go from print to digital, and I need someone who understands digital but also understands print, so to help us make this transition. Because for the life of us, all of us like artistic, nerdy, journalist, hip hop guys can't communicate with the guys in the programming team about like what it is that we want to build." So I took that opportunity to go and work with him, and then we kind of took Complex from what was just a 10 times a year print magazine to this mega internet brand that was just monstrous, and helped launch First We Feast. And when I helped launch First We Feast, that's when I got into bourbon. So this was about 10 years ago. What First We Feast was basically a food site, and they do the hot ones show where the people eat the chicken ones and try to the hot chicken wings.
Oh yeah.
So when we were launching that, because it was a food site, we started to get all these brands coming in to just do in-office tastings. And I was, as a good boss, thought it was good to have these in-office tastings, aka free happy hour, for all of my young underpaid employees. And that's, they were just leaving bottles in my office. So it just got to a point where I was just stacked with whiskey. And I had only before then kind of I was always a gin drinker. I drank, one of my homeboys that got me into Maker's Mark. And from there, it just kind of exploded, And so from there, I moved on to Viacom and worked at MTV and VH1. I worked on a lot of reality shows, did a lot, did digital media, social media. And then from Viacom, I moved on to Def Jam, where I worked for, last few years. And that's when I got into the barrel picking. So there, barrel picking was very new in New York. And I was working with a guy at a shop who had a couple barrel picks, and I asked him to, he invited me to go on one. And so I was just curious to see, would I like it? Would I be interested? And so my first barrel pick, this is like, talk about only way to go was down, was 4 Roses. And
right.
It was fantastic, and I just had such a great time. And I met Mandy, and just I really enjoyed it. And so I had said to him, hey, look, here's what I can do. I just want to see if I like this and it's fun. What I can do is I can help you with your stickering and your media and your content around your shop. And that's how I got started. And that was 37 barrel picks ago. So it's been a really cool and awesome ride now to get from, I just want to see if I can do a barrel pick, to being like, you know what, I'm going to leave media and I'm going to open up my own liquor store. But that was kind of the journey that happened. So.
Yeah, and the sticker thing, which is still huge today, it's still a big trend that's going on. But you were an early adopter of this. So tell us, what got you interested in that? And I think that, some of the things that you've done are the best that I've seen in this realm. So talk a little bit about that.
I mean, obviously, so I was in media, and so I was always very focused on, like, when I saw other people's stickers, I always thought, wow, looks like people are kind of doing like the lowest common denominator on a sticker. And I thought, let's just do something, number one, that's cooler and honors the, like, when I came into it, right, there was this push and pull between the brands saying, we don't want you to put this extra branding on our bottle, right? And also recognize that this extra branding on our bottle brings marketing and media to it, right? So there's a push and pull.
Yeah.
And I just thought, all right, instead of just being like, I'm going to put a picture of Michael Jordan or Kobe on here, like, let's actually trick this out and take it up a notch. So, like, let's die cut the sticker.
Right. So it fits perfectly around there. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And let's make sure that whatever we put on the sticker has something to do with the distillery and tells the story of the distillery, not just some random sports thing.
Or play on words. A lot of them are like play on words and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one that really put me on the map when we did the stickers was we did a whistle pig pick, which was a 13-year 95.5 MGP back in, when they had that was years ago. And it was right after we picked it, and then Pickerel passed away shortly thereafter, and then they sent it to us. And so, I said to the guy who owned the liquor store we'd done it with, we should just do like a kind of a Dave Pickerel sticker. So instead of doing a Dave Pickerel picture, I worked with a designer to do an illustration of the pot still that he designed for Whistle Pig. So those were always the types of things we try to put on the sticker, like, something that tells the story of the distillery. So, like, we've done stickers before with waterfalls that feed the water source for different distilleries. It always had to have something to do with distillery. We did ones where we did illustrations we did Russell's picks, where there was Zeus and Hercules for obviously the father-son team there that made that brand famous. We always wanted to make sure that we did something that was meaningful and that the distillery would appreciate. We did one for 4 Roses that we called Master Thief. That was a picture of Mandy Jo Vance. So,
that's a way to get in good. The person who's in charge of the program to do. Yeah. Right.
Somebody call them and tell them, oh, hey, can you give them a barrel pick now? I don't know. I mean, I'm still waiting. For my 2021 barrel pick. But yeah, man, we just always wanted to call out the distillery, the people who work there. One of the things that I believe is just that, distilling is a worldwide practice, and we're all different. We come from different places. We have different cultures and mores, but we all share distillation in common. And it's a really good way for people to kind of meet in the middle, if you will, because we all have something that we drink that's distilled. And it's really always a great conversation that people can relate to, regardless of what your differences are. And so for me, like part of the thing that I ended up really loving about doing the barrel picks is going to somebody's place and seeing where they work and talking to them and understanding what their culture is and like how they, how they live, and all of those things are important to me. And then being able to bring that to other people and be like, hey, here's what it's like here. Here's what it's like here. This is what they do. It just, that really is like, that helped me really fall in love with it, aside from the fact that like, damn, I love to drink whiskey. But that just really helped me fall in love with it, was just really the cultural, personal aspect of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's how you and that's how I met you. That's how
Right.
you became
Right.
friendly, because one of your folks saw that particular bottle, which was the Dave's Pot Still bottle. And then we ended up talking and having a discussion and then talking about it on a show many years ago.
Yeah. And we've continued to talk and be buddies ever since, which is really, really a cool thing.
Yeah, that bottle is on secondary. I've seen that bottle on secondary for like $700.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah. It's so unique.
I had one. I wish I had one. I mean, look, it is a 13-year, aside from the sticker, which is window dressing and marketing, it is a 13-year MGP rye, which is,
a premium. Yeah.
Rival all of it out there.
Yeah. So, you're going on barrel picks, you partnered with a liquor store and you're helping them out, but and you like going on the barrel picks, but everybody likes them. I mean, but you've done the ultimate is you've turned that love into, a career. You've started a company around that. So tell us a little bit about making that transition from hobbyist, bourbon barrel picker to somebody who does this now for a living.
Yeah, well, I think maybe Colin will maybe be able to relate to this, but I mean, so I went from really journalism. What happened in my career was I went from journalism, right? So when I started a magazine that was aspiring to cover hip hop culture because there wasn't any coverage out there. And Vibe magazine was a partnership between Quincy Jones and Time magazine. And they wanted to basically be the Rolling Stone of hip hop culture in the 90s, back before people were really thinking about it. And so I started in journalism, and ultimately what happened over time, and money plays a part in this, is journalism became media, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Over time, I moved from what was, like I reported on, the Biggie Smalls killing, we had the best reporting on the Tupac shooting. We had the best articles on on Jay-Z, on people that went from being rappers to being celebrities. And I worked on a lot of that stuff and all of those. And it was a fantastic time in my life, from when I worked at Vibe all the way through when I worked at Complex. But when I really made the transition over to Viacom, which was I wanted to do video, and I wanted to work at a corporate company that was spending a lot of money on video. That's really when I moved kind of from journalism to media. And during that time, kind of all of those things blended together. And now we have, everyone with the way that we hear people now talk about the news and all of that stuff is not like it was back in the day when I actually reported on stuff. We have, everyone says, the Fox News is slanted this way, and MSNBC and CNN is slanted that way. We didn't think about it like that back in the day. That was journalists were sacred, and they were out there doing their job, reporting as best they could, and no one perceived them to have a slant in any way, shape, or form. But slowly but surely, the internet happened and also had a part in this, and finance and commerce had a part in this. Like, we are where we are now, where it's hard for people to say, I understand the difference between journalism and media. So I made my transition into media because I was just interested in video and understanding video and digital video. And that's when I started working at Viacom, and I was there for 5 years, and then Def Jam for 2. When I got to Def Jam, I was working at a legendary, record label that has put out all sorts of amazing albums, from, LL Cool J to you name it, all these, there's so many great albums that we did there. And my job there was really to do brand strategy and content. So it was really to look at the marks, take the marks, the logos in particular, and help them figure out how to make money off those marks. So we did, sneakers with the Def Jam logo. We did, limited edition drops, we did books, we did all sorts of interesting things, and it was fun. But I think at that point, by the time I was there and I was a senior vice president, this was 25 years into my career, and I was like, on the side, this whiskey thing was happening for me. I was just into it, and I was vibing on it. In my office, people would come to my office. I had like at least 50 bottles of just whiskey alone, never mind other stuff, cognac, etc. And people were like, wow, you're really into this. Like, you know this shit. And I was like, yeah, I am really into it. So when I got to a point where I was just like, I think I just want to take a chance on myself. Like, I don't want to work in corporate for the rest of my life. I want to take a chance on myself, and I want to do something, I want to do something I'm passionate about. So during that time, and this is really what happened, was I did a podcast with my friend Rashawn Hall, which that podcast is called Shot Caller. It's not on anymore, but he does other stuff. But we did a podcast, and he said to me, like, what do you want to do? What do you think about? This was just me talking about being in media and also drinking and having worked with Pharrell and blah blah blah, other stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm really vibing on this barrel pick stuff, and I think like I want to take this to the next level, and I don't know, maybe open a shop and maybe figure out a brand it sometime. And it just went in my head, and I like, he helped me birth it into the world, man. And so about a year ago, I did, 2 years ago, I mean, COVID, I'm so confused by the time now, but COVID happened. And I decided to leave Def Jam and open a liquor store, basically. It's an online liquor store, it's e-commerce. And so I just did a lot of investigation about where we should be located and what we could do. And we really wanted to, one, work with a lot of craft people. So that was a factor. And then two, we just wanted to be able to do cool stuff. So I had to figure out a place where we're going to be able to work with as many craft places as we could, as also work with, some of the bigger distilleries. And so we landed on DC just because the laws were favorable there for what we wanted to do. I didn't want to be sitting in a liquor store all day. I wanted to be able to use technology because my experience and my background was in content and technology, and I wanted to be able to put that to good use. And so DC actually ends up they have a particular retail liquor license for internet only, and so we decided on DC, and that's how we launched the site last October.
Very cool. And you've also done some cool things with it too. You've helped out with the hospitality industry. So tell the audience a little bit about that, because I think that's important.
Yeah, we had a program that we called Community Kickback. It was really simple, which was in DC, the laws allow you to also, not only can you buy directly from distilleries, if they ask you to honor the 3-tier system, right? Which is your distillery, your distributor, and your retailer, right? But if a 3-tier system doesn't exist for a particular distillery, and in many cases, craft distilleries don't have national distribution, you can buy from them directly, right? And then do the importing yourself and then sell it. It also allows you to buy bottles from individuals and then sell them. And so I had a lot of people hitting me up saying, in New York, right? New York, where hospitality is a large part of our economy, a bunch of our people, due to COVID, were out of work. So these are our bartenders, these are our chefs, our cooks, our servers, our hosts. I mean, people who are friends of ours, who are friends of the program, as we like to say. Just these are the homies, right? And so I had people hitting me up saying, I have bottles and I need to sell them to pay my rent. Like, sad story.
Yeah.
Like, just imagine as a whiskey collector, if you felt like you needed to part with some of your most coveted possessions just to pay your bills, due to this pandemic situation. And I felt bad because I think the norm was that other people were taking advantage of the situation and saying like, oh, you're a bartender, let's say, and you work at this bar and you have this you have a Pappy Van Winkle bottle and it's worth on the secondary market $1,000, let's just say, right? But you need the money, so you can't wait for someone to pay you $1,000, and so you're like, forget it, I'll take 400, right? Let's just say, and you don't want to part with it anyway. And so I looked at that, people were hitting me up, and I was so distraught by the situation that I just decided, you know what, I'm just gonna if you're in our industry and we know you and you're friends with us, then we'll buy your bottles from you and sell them on the site at, at whatever. Go on Wine Searcher, tell me what the secondary price is, and we'll pay you that. Like, I'm not going to hustle you for your bottles, because this is a situation where people are in kind of dire financial need. So I'll pay you whatever the secondary price is. We're literally just going to put it on the site for that price plus whatever our, our costs are to make it happen, and sell it for that. So we're not going to make any money off of it. You're going to make the money directly, and we'll just recoup what we had to do to make it happen. So,
hey man, that's cool, brother. That's cool, helping people out, that need it. And it's using what you have to help others. I think that's pretty darn cool.
And it's a bummer. I mean, New York has such a big hospitality industry, and it's just like, we rely on and / love these people, and they are also our friends, our personal friends. And I just didn't feel right, man. We got to look out for one another, and, we can't always put, our personal interests or commerce over other people's livelihood. And so, I just wanted to do a small part. I mean, the thing I always say is, like, I hope we don't have to continue to do that.
Yeah.
If I had my brothers, we wouldn't be doing it at all, right? People would just be employed, et cetera, et cetera. So, but at least I know that, like, I have because of our licensing and because of where we are, we have the ability to do it and help people in that regard.
A point that's very important to you, being in this business, inclusion. And I mean, I can see, great strides being made in the bourbon industry, but you tell me where you think we're at. How do you think that the bourbon industry is doing? And are you seeing the same things I'm seeing, that things are headed in the right direction?
I actually think we're in a great place, right? And I don't know, mm-hmm. I look at it slightly differently, right? So there's been an innumerable amount of times where I have showed up at a distillery in Kentucky and someone has come out and said, are you sure you're, to do a barrel pick, and you pull up at the security place, right, with the thing, and, and then someone has come out, some security guy, and is like, are you sure you're in the right place? So that's happened to me a million times. Okay, fine. So you don't have a lot of experience seeing people like me come here, right? But that is about exposure, right? That's not an issue of racism. That's an issue of exposure. And so
it might also be an issue of, like, people, the distillery. There's a lot of people who like wander around the grounds of a distillery at any given time, and you're just like,
Yeah. So I think 3 years ago, it was
even Brooklyn Navy Yard. We get people who,
we're only seeing, like, groups of chubby white guys from Tennessee come here to do barrel pick. Right? We're not used to seeing women, and we're not used to seeing, Black people and ... But again, like I said, that's not an issue of racism. That's an issue, or prejudice. That's an issue of exposure and just not having had that experience yet. And so I was never a person that looked at it like, oh, I need to have a chip on my shoulder, or this is insulting to me. I was like, well, look, now you met me and now you know who I am. And guess what? If all things work out, you're going to see a lot more of me. And if all things work out for me, you're going to see a lot more people that look like me. I think broad strokes, last year was a very weird year because of all of the hardcore stuff that was going on, and the social issues that came about that were exposed because of the COVID stuff was really hard for everyone. I can say that. And the George Floyd thing in particular, me as a man of color, a Black man and a dad, was really hard for me and really hard for my family to see it and watch it, and then have the conversations and all this stuff. But I think that the bourbon industry or the spirits industry responded very well in saying, like, hey, we're kind of just about equality, right? And when you saw them take that step and say, we want to let everyone know, like, we honor and value all our consumers and people we work with, there was a lot of backlash against that in social media, right? And social media tends to bring out all the trolls and all the hatred and all the people who are too afraid to put a name to a face and say something in public. And so that was difficult last year. And I know you and I had some combos about it last year, about there was a lot of hatred, spewed at those of us who said to the distilleries and the brands, thank you very much. We appreciate the fact that you are taking the stance. It means a lot to us, just as your consumers, that you would just make the statement. Right. There were a lot of other people who felt that it was not necessary to make a statement or have that in any way, shape, or form be involved in their business, right? So, and then, so for those of us so thank you to the distilleries for that. A lot of hatred came back our way, and I was in particular one of those people. So it was hard, but I don't think that we're in a bad or negative place. I think the reality of the situation is a lot of these companies are more diverse than people think and give them credit for. And a lot of them want to be inclusive. But as a person who worked in corporate America, like, you have to understand when you're dealing with a large company that changing your ways and the way you do business and thinking about your consumers differently is a long road, right? It is a long, big road. And when you have people in your company who haven't ever been tasked with having to do that before, right? It's hard to change because the people are doing something they haven't done before. And so I think that's where we are, is a scenario where people have said, where the distilleries and the brands have said, we love all our consumers, we value all equally, we recognize that there's a new group of consumers in this market who are buying our brands, and we ride with you and we're interested in you and we want to honor you, but also we don't know you as well as we knew all our previous consumers, and you just have to understand that it takes time for brands to figure that out. Like, that's not an overnight change, but that's okay. As long as everyone is committed, it's great. We're all working towards the same goals, but it just takes time, and that requires a little bit of patience and and all of that. So I feel very good about it. Like, I've made such great friends being in this business, and people who are both friends and also business associates now because I work in this business. And I feel really good about it. I think the future is huge and bright. And the more, I think about it, like, the more people that come to the party, the better the party is going to be.
Yeah. One of the things too to point out is the power of what's inside this bottle, because it does draw people together, and it doesn't matter. You bring out a bottle of bourbon and just start pouring, and you're not talking about anything other than the liquor itself. And it's amazing how people from all different backgrounds can come together and just talk about bourbon and their love for it. So it's one of the cool things that definitely comes out of bourbon.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, man, I linked up with you at Neely Family Distillery,
Yep.
a month ago, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I ever would have thought 10 years ago that I would be at Neely Family Distillery.
Right. Yeah. And there you are.
Hanging out, talking shit, drinking absinthe.
Drinking absinthe, just having fun, man. Yeah. It's a cool thing. Oh.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and I think that we all want what's best, and we all see it, and we're all positive actors in the space, and as right, we're all bending towards what's right and what's going to be what's right, and what is going to make us all be just kind of a bigger family, and I think that's wonderful. But I also recognize that it takes time. It all takes time.
So where does Taste Select Repeat go from here? Can you turn this into a huge thing? Do you have in your mind how to scale this thing up? And could there ever be a brick and mortar store involved too?
I don't know about a brick and mortar store, man.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, okay. So phase one was, right, we were originally planning, and I have a partner, Pierre, who you have not met, but
right,
we work together, and we've been working together for years now, and that's, I think, what makes us good. Right, is we have different approaches to the way that we pick whiskey and things that we like, and like we complement each other on what we do. So we had originally wanted to be, further along than we were last year, but COVID happened, right? So we didn't end up. We thought we were going to be in business in the spring, and we ended up not being able to be in business until the fall. So it took a little bit of extra time. Since we've been in business, which was, the last quarter of 2020 and the first quarter, so 6 months now, everything is going like hotcakes off the site. So whether it's stuff that we are core products that we're selling for brands, in your typical bottles, or whether it's our barrel picks, everything is flying off the site. And so we're very happy about that. We've been able to now this year, like, really ramp up the inventory and offer more stuff. So we're really happy. Our member program went from 200 people in October to 1,000 people, by March. So we're killing it there too. We're excited about working with all the different brands. We're excited about the barrel picks. We're excited about their core products. And there's more of our own stuff that we want to do. We did one really great blending project with Finger Lakes Distilling, and I think that really suits what Pierre and I are thinking about long term, which is like figuring out ways to either work with people to do very specific and cool projects like that, or to do things that end up just being a taste, select, repeat branded, bottle of whiskey or gin or mezcal. Like, we have tequila barrel picks coming out now and mezcal barrel picks and stuff that we're new to.
OJ, are you going to get to the point where you have private labels too, where it's something that I can buy this certain whiskey all the time, and not just a barrel pick that's come gone? Is there plans for that?
Yeah, we would love to, but I think it takes a little bit of time, right? My thought was coming into it, there are 3 different areas you can come into this business, right? It's retailer, distributor, or supplier. And I thought that if we ultimately wanted to do our own private brands around various spirits, but I know that I don't want to distill them. Like, I'm not a scientist.
Right.
I can blend the hell out of some shit, I'll tell you that. But I can't distill it. Distill it. And I respect what the distillers are doing, because it's not just a craft, it's a science. It's some high skill level shit that not everybody can do. And I don't think that that's in my wheelhouse, but I do think that what we've proven from just doing our barrel picks and some of our other stuff is that, like, we're really excellent at the other stuff. And in different cultures in the world, like, in Japan, for instance, the master distiller is not the guy, the master blender is the guy, right?
Yeah.
So I think we're good at that. Pierre and I are good at that part. And we want to turn that into a business where we can actually have some taste, select, repeat core products. And not just whiskey, obviously. Like, we also want to do some other things that we drink. But whiskey is obviously at the top of our mind. And then we want some hats and some cool merch and some fun stuff. So, like, you'll be the first guy with it. We're gonna have a Tommy Bahamas shirt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I know there's no time, but Tommy Bahamas shirts don't move unless Steve Akeley says buy it.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. They need to sponsor the show.
He's our best brand ambassador.
If someone knows them, they got to sponsor the show. I mean, come on.
We will do some merch. We want to ultimately have our own private brands. We're going to work with distilleries, obviously, to make those brands happen. And then the last thing that I'm interested in, because I think it's just better for our community and for the business as a whole, is really been trying to work with some of the distilleries to get people onto their campuses that haven't had that experience yet and who they don't normally see on their campuses. So we're working on doing like some barrel pick training for different groups, women's groups of people of color, etc. People who just haven't had that experience, where they can like come in, meet for a weekend, have kind of an elevated experience of barrel picking, and like learn exactly like what it is we do, how we do it, what makes it good versus bad, and ultimately leave with something for their group that they're going to be really happy and proud of, and really try to like bridge that gap between the suppliers and these new consumers that they're not sure. Like, I know how to talk to those people because those are the people that buy from us in particular, right? Like, we have a large amount of people who are under 35 that buy from us, a large amount of people of color that buy from us, and a large amount of women that buy from us. So I understand what that market is. I think a lot of the suppliers don't, and they want to understand what that market is and preach those people. And I keep saying, look, let me just do what I did, which was bring like what made me fall in love with it was coming here and meeting you in person. So let's figure out a way to get these people here in person so that like you can meet them and show them why your distillery is great.
Yeah. Last question I got for you is just a fun one. What one person, living person, it can't be, it's not one of these existential one, anybody that's ever lived. What living person would you like to join you on a barrel pick?
What living person would I like to join me on a barrel pick? Could it just be anyone?
It could be anyone. It could be celebrity, could be whatever you like.
Okay, any celebrity. I'm gonna go deep. I'm gonna throw Rihanna out there. Just
Okay.
I'm jealous. I'm kidding. Just to make my wife jealous. Nah, just because I think it would be just a blast and a fun time, and I know that she gets her drink on.
Okay. She listens to our podcast. I'm not sure she watches the Bourbon Talk Show. So hopefully she's hopefully
text
she's
her when it's done and ask her.
Yeah, I'll see. I'll see.
So
I worked at Def Jam, and we used to put her albums out, but even that wasn't, even that isn't going to get me any closer to that happening.
So I know that you take Jessica Ann on some barrel picks. So I'm just picturing Jess and Rihanna, and that's just going to be a party in a Rick house. We're going to have a great time.
100%. So today, today we just did I'm in Louisville right now, and we were out at Heaven Hill today. We did an Elijah Craig barrel pick at Barrel Strength. So they just rechanged their program so that instead of it being 94 proof, you can do barrel strength. So we're like I think the fourth store to pick barrel.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
I think we're the first ones to release the bottle, but Jess was there today helping us pick.
Nice. Well, congrats on being
Which
on
had
that
to be
early.
fun.
Yeah. Oh, she's always fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this show up as we always do by talking about where people can find us. OJ, we're going to start with you. Where can people find you?
Neat Rocks Cocktail on Instagram, and online our shop is tasteselectrepeat.com.
All right. Colin.
KingsCountyDistillery.com, and you can find us on Instagram at Kings County Distillery.
All right. McNew.
On Instagram, McNew ABV.
All right. For me, I'm an easy guy to find. I'm at Steve Akeley on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. I've got a website, steveakeley.com. We've also got a company website. That thing's abvnetwork.com. Check it out because everything that we do is out there. All of our previous shows, our blogs, our podcasts. We've got our shop out there. We've got our virtual bourbon event, so much more. abvnetwork.com. McNew, what would you like to say before we get out of here?
I would like to remind our audience to please hit that subscribe button for Bourbon Sasquatch on YouTube, where all of our shows will be posted. When you're watching an episode, please give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, and share it. It helps new people find the show, which is very important to us. And next week, we'll have Adam Stump of Stumpy Spirits and Nate Weingar of 5280 Whiskey Society.
All right. For my audience here, let's give a hand for Mr. OJ Lima. Thank you, my friend.
Colin.
Cheered for Colin Spoelman as well. Thank you so much, my friend. It was awesome. For next week, audience, we'll have a brand new show for you. Looking forward to that. Until then, take care, everybody. See you.
Bye.
Peace.